If you watch my videos, you know that I'm a producer and engineer and I work with people a lot in person. But right now what's going on is we're going through this pandemic, this COVID-19 crisis, and it's hard for us to link up with other people. And in fact, a lot of the artists that I used to record and work with, they're asking me, hey, how do I record myself? What equipment should I get so that I can actually continue to record songs from the comfort of my home and still hire you to mix and master and produce and do all the things that I do already, just minus the recording in person element. Now in today's video, I'm gonna answer this question. I'm gonna walk you through an essential home studio equipment list. And not only that, I'm gonna show you the equipment that I use and that I have at my studio, and hopefully you could pull something away from this. You ready? Let's go. Are you an artist, producer, engineer, or music professional that's looking for funding for your music career? Could you benefit from having funding for studio time, mixing and mastering, or even marketing costs? I think I have something for you. I've written a free ebook. It's 9 pages, super short and digestible, where I break down the 6 main places that artists and professionals like yourself can find funding for their musical projects. If this sounds like it's of value to you, please click the link below and you can download this for free today and benefit from this knowledge. I hope this helps. I'll see you guys soon. Peace. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy 5-Piece, producer and engineer extraordinaire. Thank you for checking out this video. I'm super excited to walk you through what equipment you should have at your home studio. And not only that, but I'm also going to show you what's in mine, what I like to use, what I rely on, and all that good stuff. But before we get into that, if you can, please like and subscribe to this video, subscribe to the channel. You can check more of my videos out. I talk a lot about engineering and production, but I'm also talking about other topics like music funding and how to secure music grants for yourself and your musical projects. So subscribe so you can see that today. But in today's video, we're gonna talk about essential home studio equipment, and we're gonna talk about a bunch of different pieces of gear that you could have, but really what I'm focusing on here is I'm focusing on vocalists who are gonna be recording at home. So if you're an artist, a rapper, a singer that's recording at your house, or an apartment or a condo, and you just want to make sure that you have a pretty solid setup that you can work with, I'm going to break down that today, and still you can rely on other engineers like myself to mix and master your music. And if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link below so you can check out my mixing and mastering services. Totally online, totally remote. We can make you sound amazing today if you'd like. So let's talk about this essential home studio equipment list. Let's start with number one. Number one, the computer. You need a really solid and sturdy computer to run your home studio, because this is really the brain of the whole operation. And if you have a crappy computer, you're going to be dealing with a lot of headaches and problems, and we want to avoid that because you might have latency issues, all kinds of stuff. You may not be able to run plugins, all kinds of just little things that really add up and become a headache for you later. Now what I recommend is, and I don't really want to get into the whole PC Mac thing, you choose whichever one is your preference. I personally prefer Macs, but if it's a PC for you, that's a PC for you, no problem. But what I recommend is you focus on the specs. Make sure you have a decked out computer that's set up to handle audio recording. Now, a lot of gaming computers are really good for that, but if you want to really focus on individual specifications, I would recommend you have a good processor, at least an Intel i7 or better, or comparable. Maybe you have a different company that makes it, but something similar to that. You want to have at least 8 to 16 gigabytes of RAM, but more is always good. And you definitely want to make sure you have a lot of hard drive storage space. And I recommend actually using flash storage. So for example, I would use at least a 1 terabyte solid state drive. I have 2 of those in my computer, and I find that this setup works really, really well. Helps avoid latency, helps me store all my files, and runs my sessions very, very smoothly. Number 2, the software. In order to properly capture audio on your computer, you need the right software to do it, and what you need is specifically called a digital audio workstation, or a DAW for short. There's a lot of DAWs out there. I like to use Pro Tools, but you could totally use other ones like Logic, Cubase, FL Studio, Ableton, and many more. There's a whole bunch out there. And really how I like to think about it is they're all really the same thing, they just do things a little bit different. Think about it like this. Can a Honda and a Lamborghini get you to where you need to go? Absolutely, as long as you know how to drive. So if you know how to drive, if you learn how to use these tools, you can make any of them work. I like to use Pro Tools once again, and that's because it's industry standard, and I find that it's just very easy to edit and do things with audio that is a lot more challenging in other DAWs, but I'll leave that choice to you. And it's really easy to use any DAW really, because I work with a bunch of clients and some of them even use Logic and other DAWs, and they send their files to me to mix and master, and I do that in Pro Tools. So even though you may use a different DAW, you can still transfer files to people and get what you need to get done. Number 3, the audio interface. The audio interface is what connects everything together in the studio. It connects your computer to your speakers or your headphones. It connects your microphone to your computer, and it allows everything to work seamlessly. So you absolutely need an audio interface in order to do this properly. Now there's a bunch of different interfaces out there. I recommend spending the money and getting a good quality interface, because a lot of these music stores are selling, to be honest, inferior products, and a lot of the clients that I work with, they're buying these crappy interfaces for 100 or 200 bucks, and they wonder why their vocals sound terrible. A lot of the time it's because of this interface, okay? So you want to make sure you get a high quality interface that will not only capture amazing sounding vocals, but also work with your studio environment. Now, a lot of people want to know which interfaces do I recommend, and I recommend either the Apogee Duet or the Universal Audio Apollo. I really like the Apollo especially, that's what I use, because it has a high-end converter and it gives you access to different Universal Audio plugins, which is just a great bonus. Not to mention, it's just an amazing interface that sounds really, really good. If you watch a lot of other producers and engineers at the industry level work, you'll see that they all have one. Not monkey see, monkey do, but at the same time, there's a reason why they're all using that same interface. So you can use those, or if you want, you could spend a little less money and maybe get something like a Focusrite Sapphire. This is a red interface that you see often. Number 4, the microphone. The microphone is arguably the thing that gets scrutinized the most when it comes to building a home studio. People are obsessed with picking the right microphone, but they fail to realize something, and that is there's no such thing as a bad mic, just the wrong mic for a certain job. So depending on your voice, you may buy a microphone and it actually may be the worst potential choice you made, right? You could choose something that doesn't make sense for your voice, or if you're in a certain environment and you have certain circumstances around you, that mic may also not make sense. So for example, when you're online, you're gonna see a lot of people talking about condenser microphones, and you'll see names like Neumann floating around. And while these are really good, high quality and expensive microphones, buying that mic may not make sense for you if you have somebody downstairs who's banging pots and pans, or if you're in an untreated room. For that reason, I recommend you get a dynamic microphone. Now, what I like to use is a Shure SM7B. This is a popular broadcast microphone. It's something that Michael Jackson used for Thriller, and The Weeknd, he's used it on a lot of his recordings as well. It's honestly a very high quality mic, and it's fairly economical. I think I paid $500 Canadian for mine. And that's really cheap, especially when you think that a lot of other microphones are way past $1,000. And not only that, you can also buy these secondhand if you find the right person selling it. So once again, if you are in an environment that is not treated, or if you're concerned about background noise and other things happening, I highly, highly recommend you get a dynamic mic like the Shure SM7B. Number 5, Playback. Now, what I'm talking about with Playback here is I'm talking about how you're going to be able to listen to what you are doing. Now, depending on your budget and your circumstance, you may be able to afford a decent pair of monitors, aka speakers, or you might just want to buy a high quality pair of headphones. I recommend at least getting a high quality pair of headphones. That way, if you have roommates or people that you're living with, you're not going to be able to disturb them, and you're still going to be able to hear everything you're doing when it comes to recording. Now, once again, I'm imagining that you're not going to be mixing yourself and that you're instead going to be working with an engineer like me to help your music sound amazing. That being said, there's a few things you could do. So you could buy a nice closed back pair of headphones. This is a set of headphones that doesn't allow for bleed, aka the audio isn't going to leak out of the headphone and be picked up by the mic. This is a very important consideration because often when I'm mixing, I'm hearing the headphone bleed from the artist, and sometimes people switch beats up after, but you'll still have the bleed from the original beat on the vocal recording in the mix, which is very, very challenging to deal with. For that reason, I recommend getting the closed back headphones at the very least. Now, if you do want to get monitors, you can get a few different varieties. I really like the Yamaha HS8s. They're a bigger monitor, but you can also do something smaller like the HS5s. These are still going to give you everything that you need. And as a matter of fact, even though I have two different sets of monitors here, I'm very often using the smaller set because I find that that gives me a much more accurate representation of what my song is going to sound like. It actually reminds me of a quote that I heard as well about mixing, which is you make your big decisions on small speakers and your small decisions on big speakers. For that reason, getting a pair of smaller monitors might be better for you. Number 6, things that are nice to have. Now, when it comes to recording vocals, there's only a few things that are nice to have, and most of it is outboard gear. Now, this is the boxes of things you see people have in their studio, the racks of different boxes with buttons and knobs and switches, and there are all kinds of things. They could be outboard compressors, outboard preamps, outboard equalizers, all kinds of stuff. Now, these are really, really amazing tools to have, but they do cost a lot and they are absolutely not necessary. Now, they're definitely helpful and they can help you create new tones and they might even make you sound a little bit better, but chances are that thing is not going to make or break whether your song is good. In fact, the average listener is not going to listen and be like, oh my God, he's using a Neve 1073 going into an LA2A. They're not going to say that. They're going to just know whether or not they like the song and whether you recorded it through an external preamp or you used a UAD Apollo like I use, or even if you use a cheaper interface like a Focusrite Sapphire, they're not going to care. All they're going to care is whether or not they like the song. So definitely keep this in mind when you're building your studio and don't go crazy thinking you need to buy things that you don't. Now, a lot of people always ask, what are you using in your studio? What equipment do you have? And they really want to know what I'm using to, do what I do when it comes to engineering and producing. So I wanted to show you, and you could absolutely emulate this if you like what you see. You don't have to, but everything I'm about to show you is very functional, and I'm not really much of a gear junkie. I don't really care. I believe more so in the person pushing the buttons and making sure that they can do what they need to do. But let's do this. Let me show you what I got in my studio here. So let's start with the computer. I'm running a 15-inch MacBook Pro. It's a bit older, it's a 2012 model. I got the model that you could still upgrade over time. You could add components and stuff. It's not soldered together. And I have made some modifications to it over the years, but it's an i7 processor. It's 8 gig of RAM right now, which is fine. I do want more RAM. I'm gonna be upgrading to a 16 shortly. And I also have two 1 terabyte solid state flash drives in it. These are separate drives. One is an audio drive, one is my actual hard drive on the computer. I just like having both, makes things really easy, helps me organize, and just have a lot of space. You need a lot of space when you're dealing with files and audio files like that. Now, in addition to the computer, I have my interface, which is my Universal Audio Apollo, the twin. I definitely recommend this interface. I love this interface. I got the older one here, the silver one. We also have the newer model beside it. Just a really intuitive interface, gives you access to their plugins, and honestly, it just sounds really clean and is very portable, so I like using that for when I'm recording. When it comes to the microphone, I'm using the Shure SM7B. This is the mic I talked about. You might recognize it from a lot of podcasts. Joe Rogan uses it, Michael Jackson and The Weeknd use it like I mentioned. You'll probably start to notice it more after you watch this because it's a very, very popular mic. But something that I do with this mic is I actually use another tool with it. And the reason why is when you record with this mic, it's not very sensitive, okay? This is great for avoiding noise. So if you have a noisier environment and it's not treated, this is the perfect mic for that. But you need to make sure that you have a lot of gain for that mic. So whenever I'm setting my gain on my preamp for this mic, usually it's gonna be like really up here. You know what I mean? It's not very sensitive. You need a lot of volume to make it work. However, if you get this additional tool, if you come over here, I'm gonna show you. We got this thing here. It's a little blue box. It's called a cloud lifter. Now this cloud lifter, it actually connects to the mic and then goes into the preamp. And what it does is it adds clean gain. It adds a bunch of clean gain to the signal and makes it louder. So what that really does is, remember how I showed you it was up here originally for the preamp? With the cloud lifter, you're gonna be able to have it, maybe a quarter of the way up, and you'll still be able to get potentially more volume than you would if you had it cranked without it. So it's a really, really helpful tool. And if you're thinking about getting the Shure SM7B, I definitely recommend you get the cloud lifter with it. Now, in terms of playback, I got a few different speakers here, as you can see. They're all the KRK Rocket models, so I got a set of KRK Rocket 8s, and I have a set of KRK Rocket 5s. Now, I mentioned that I like to use the Rocket 5s. They're smaller, and they're easier to make these bigger decisions, you could say, and I usually pair it with a Yamaha sub. There's a sub that we have here. You may not be able to see it right now, but that sub gives me all the bass I need, and the small speakers just give me a really accurate image of what I'm working on. Now, I don't use the big ones as much as I used to. They are good, especially if you don't have a sub, but the thing is they are hyped. That means they have a bit of a high-end and low-end boost on them, so that gives it a bit of a not accurate image, let's say. So you have to be mindful when using monitors like that, and that's why I like to stick to the small ones. Now, in addition to the speakers, I do have this very used and tattered pair of Shure SRH 840 headphones. These are closed back headphones. They don't bleed, like I said. I've gotten a lot of use out of these over the years. I like them. They sound very accurate, and I'm really happy with them. In fact, I actually just ordered another set to replace this one because, as you can see, I've used them to shit. So you can see there's not a whole lot going on with my studio. It's very simple. It's very functional. I'm able to take this stuff home, and honestly, I'm really satisfied with this. I haven't felt a need to add anything to it over the years, although I might be adding some of those nice to have things I mentioned shortly. So if you got some value out of this, please like, subscribe, and share. Please share with your friends, your producer friends, engineer friends, anybody you think is going to benefit from this knowledge, especially people who are looking to record at home. If this is you, I hope it helped, and I'll see you again soon. Peace out.
5.